huge. Hey, everybody. All my scribes out there, welcome to Scribe Arise Live. This is our seventh night, and I am excited to be here. I challenged myself. I shared earlier at the beginning of this week, I challenged myself to go live every day for the remainder of February. So this is night 7. It's Sunday evening, and anybody who knows me knows that this is a huge thing for me because Sundays are like work days for me. So usually I come home from our gatherings, I sit in my chair, and it's a wrap. But I'm keeping my commitment to be live every day um, until through Thursday. So I'm excited about that. For those who may be watching for the first time, I'm Deborah Gaston, owner of Deborah Gaston LLC and Total Concept Publishing. I help aspiring kingdom writers, ministry leaders, and kingdom entrepreneurs share their message, their expertise, their revelation and wisdom in a book. I do that by guiding them through the writing and self-publishing process from blank page to bestseller, and then help them use that book to build their business and their brand, to grow a ministry, to leave a legacy, and to create multiple streams of income. My overarching purpose, though, the call on my life really is to help kingdom writers write the books that will change mindsets, shift culture, and advance God's kingdom in their sphere of influence. So if you're watching on Facebook, I hope that you will just make a comment. I am using StreamYard as my platform today. So if you're on Facebook and comment, I can't see your name unless you give them permission. So give them permission and let me know where you're from and where you are in the writing process. If you're watching on YouTube, of course, we want you to subscribe, hit that notification bell so you know every time that video posts or every time we go live. And then again, comment and share. And if you're watching on LinkedIn, comment, repost as well. And let other people who know that you know are working on books or desire to write a book, that this is a time for them to get in and get some good information and training before they get started. All right, this week we have been talking about things that every aspiring author needs to do, well, every author needs to do before they actually sit down and work on that first draft. So we have covered, we have covered 5 important areas. We talked about the importance of knowing your mission, your purpose for your book, identifying your market, your target audience. We've talked about identifying your metron, your sphere of influence. We've talked about clarifying your message so that you're not trying to cover too much within one book. And then yesterday, we spent some time talking about mapping out your reader's journey so that you have a logical, strategic way of guiding them from where they are at the beginning of the book to where they need to be at the end of the book, or where you want them to be at the end of the book, to that big aha. So today, technically, if you've done all of those things, you're really clear on your message, your market, your metron, your message, and you've done the mapping, you're technically ready to start your first draft. But there are some things that you need to really consider before you sit down to write. And those are the things we're going to talk about this evening before we talk about things that you should do while writing your first draft. And that is understanding that if you are going to answer God's call on your life to write. And I'm assuming if you're watching this, you know that God has planted a book in you. He's been speaking to you about releasing the knowledge and the wisdom that you have gained over the years in a specific area that's going to help someone who really needs that. That it is not enough to just say, I know God has called me to do this, but you have to make the commitment. Psalm 37:5 says, commit your way to the Lord, trust also in him, and he shall bring it to pass. T.D. Jakes said this, without commitment, nothing happens. I've always been pretty intrigued by people who find great success in whatever their areas are, whether it's authors, athletes, educators, entrepreneurs. And as you look over their lives and you're going to study them, they're able to succeed, not so much because of their knowledge base. It's not that they necessarily that we are more intelligent than everybody else. It's not necessarily that we're more educated than anyone else. Or even highly motivated than anyone else. It's not that they have the support of family and friends, or that they've got a lot of money that they can use. The thing that sets them apart is the fact that they are committed to the process, and they have disciplined themselves in such a way that they're going to do whatever is necessary to accomplish their goals. So so many things vie for our times. We've got careers. Some of us are in ministry. We've got families. We've got a host of responsibilities. And sometimes all of those things kind of squeeze writing right out of the mix. We all say, or I know I've said, I'll get to it. And sometimes you do. Most times you don't. We allow everything and everybody to take precedence in our lives over the books that are yearning to be birthed, and they stay in that embryonic state because as first time authors who may have other careers and other things going on, we don't always place the priority on writing that we do on other things. But if you're one of those people that knows that this is the time that is saying, you've got to get this book done. If you know that he has planted a seed, it's been incubating in you for a very long time. Once you realize that writing is your act of worship, once you realize that it is also an act of obedience, and you see that that is key, then you are intentional. We become intentional about knocking down every excuse and making the commitment to actually do the work. It doesn't happen by osmosis. It doesn't happen by wishing. It doesn't happen because you write here and there every other day, once a month, put it aside for 6 months, pick it up again. It doesn't happen that way. You have to make the commitment. It is a commitment. It is not a convenience necessarily. But if you know that God has told you to do that, then you are willing, again, to make that commitment. This is not about trying to guilt you into anything, because guilt is never a motivating factor at all. But you already know. And I know if you've been watching every night, that you know that God has given you a book, or you've even started writing that book, and you know this is the time that it needs to be released. You have to be determined. You have to be willing to make the commitment and give yourself no excuse. Sometimes we think we have some legitimate reasons, but when we really look at it, it's really just an excuse. And usually the excuse we give ourselves is to mask some level of fear. And that's the bottom line. Procrastination, putting it off and putting it off, and I'll get to it, and putting it off and putting it off. Procrastination is a symptom of something deeper. And it's usually an underlying fear. So if you find yourself saying, I know God's called me to write this book, and I'll get to it, and I'll get to it. I don't want to scare anybody by sharing a story of someone that I knew who kept saying she'll get to it and then was unable to get to it because her life ended before she could finish the book. And I remember once she had been diagnosed with cancer, and her husband had sent out this email to all of his friends to pray for her. And he said, we're believing God because she still has a book to write. And unfortunately, she didn't get that book finished. And I'm not saying that to scare anybody, but it's sobering when you think about the reality of the arrogance of thinking that God is going to give us more time because we keep putting it off. So I want us to really consider, is this a call on your life? And what are you willing to do to commit to the process? All right? Perfectionism feeling inadequate, comparing yourself to others are symptoms of fear. And so you need to get to the root of the fear. And I always tell people, right in the face of fear. You got those voices trying to tell you what you can and can't do and why you shouldn't be writing a book and who do you think you are. Sometimes you just have to override the voices and write anyway. I posted something on Facebook a couple of days ago saying that as a writer, your greatest act of spiritual warfare is to actually write. If the enemy can get you to find something else to do other than take 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and half an hour a day to work on that book, he feels he has won. But we know he is a liar. So that's my motivation for today. You ready to commit? Let's talk about some things that you'll need to consider before you actually start writing that first draft. Got to have a plan. You got to have actually, we talked about mapping and having a plan for the book itself. You've got to have a specific plan that you're willing to commit to as well. We have to set goals. We have to develop a plan for achieving those goals. This is an act of faith. If I sit down and I say, this is what I'm going to write, this is how long I'm going to write, or this is how many words I'm going to write a day, then God knows that we believe what he said about us as authors. All right. So now is the time for you to start making some decisions and setting some writing goals and developing your plan. Where and when will you write? That's going to be key. You have to look at, especially if you're working or you've got other commitments, look at the flow of your day. How often will you write? Consider this. Are you a morning person? Are you a night person? What is your peak time? Many people, many writers prefer doing it early in the morning because your mind is clear and your heart is open. But I recognize that mornings may not work for everybody. So you have to decide based on the flow of your day, determine what works best for you. You may look at your day and think, man, I can't squeeze anything else in here, but we find time for everything that we want to do. Anything that we want to do, we'll find the time for it. We'll find the money for it. Is writing a priority? If it is, then you will set the time, find the time, and then if that means getting up early in the morning, if it means earlier in the morning, if that means staying up a little bit later at night, you're going to have to be willing to make that commitment for a short season. It's not going to be for the rest of your life. It doesn't, and it should not be for a year or for months. If you commit to some level of consistency, then you can knock that out in weeks, really in weeks. Build it into your schedule. Set a time, make it sacred. I always tell people, my Christians, my believers, my kingdom authors, to look at that time as being as sacred as the time that you spend in prayer, the time that you spend in worship. Why? Because this is an act of worship. The time that you spend studying the word of God. Make that time just as sacred and let people know this is my writing time. I'll get to you. I'll get back with you later, but please don't disturb whatever this time period is. And I want to encourage you to begin small. The amount of time that you give or how much you write during that time is not as important as remaining consistent. Some days you may be only to get a sentence or a paragraph down. That's fine. But you want to make it as consistent as possible. Every day is the best. If you can write every day for 30 minutes to an hour, you would be surprised at what you would be able to accomplish. If you're just getting started, don't set times like I'm going to write all day, or I'm going to write for 3 or 4 hours. It's not going to happen. Start small. You'll often find that once you get started, you'll keep going because you don't want to break that flow. But don't start off saying, I'm going to write all morning, because it's going to be a challenge for you if you've not been in the habit of writing like that. And then you want to make sure that you create an atmosphere and a space that says a writer is at work here. Then that means you're creating an environment that is conducive for writing. What does your writing space look like? This is my space. I've got things on the wall that remind me that I'm a writer. I've got pictures of my vacation. Can't see this wall over here, but I've got pictures from the beaches and various places that I've visited. And this is the space. This is also my prayer room, so that I can really sense the presence of God in this space. You may want to create a space, make sure you have everything there that you need, your computer, notes, pens, paper, reference books, everything that you need, and then surround yourself with things that spawn creativity. And if home doesn't work for you, you got a whole lot going on and people are in and out and pulling on you all the time, then find some place where you can go away from home for an hour or so and just write. Someplace quiet, someplace peaceful. I would often, when I first retired from the public school systems, I would get up every morning, pack up my stuff, and go to a Panera, get a cup of chai latte or a cup of coffee, and just sit in a booth for about an hour or so and knock some stuff out. You might want to go to a library. Most public libraries have spaces where you can just be in a place by yourself. They have rooms set up that you can write. You want to make sure that you are minimizing any distractions. That means you might want to turn everything, put your phone on do not disturb. Don't have to respond to every text message. You don't have to look at every email. Shut down all the browsers on your computer so things popping up don't pull you away from that. Silence your phone for that hour. You can do without your phone for an hour. Let people in your world know that this is my writing time. And if it's not an emergency, I'll get back with you later. People who care about you will respect that time, but they'll respect it if you respect it. It's if again, your writing time for the kingdom writer is time with the Lord. I want you to keep that in mind. If you are a kingdom writer, your writing time is time with God. So again, we want you to see it as a sacred time. You really can fulfill your dream of becoming, or rather answer the call. It's not just about having a dream. It is because you know that God has called you to do this. Commit your way to God. Trust him and see what he does when you do your part. We always say, if I do my part, God will do his part. Here's the reality. God's already done his part. He's waiting for you to do yours. So make this commitment. When will you write? Are you going to write every day? I get maybe every day might be a bit much. Every other day, Mondays, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, whatever the combination of days are. Again, every day works best. But if you can't do every day, pick 2 or 3 days. Are you going to wait till the weekend? Are you going to do Mondays, Wednesdays, Fridays, Tuesdays, Thursdays, Saturdays? What days are you going to write? And then you have to determine for how long. Some people decide I'm going to write for an hour a day. Some people decide that they're going to write so many words a day. So I'm going to say I'm going to write 2,000 words a day. That sounds like a lot. It really is not a lot. 2,000 words is about a blog post amount of words. And you can knock 2,000 words out in a minute. Others may say I'm going to knock out a chapter a day or a chapter a week. And that make that the commitment. And then where are you going to write? Where is the quietest, most peaceful place? What do you need to surround yourself with? I like to play worship, instrumental worship music when I'm writing. Some people need it to be silent. It depends on you. If silence works best for you, go for it. If music helps you and inspires you, play some music. I suggest it be instrumental so the words don't distract you. If you need to go somewhere else to write other than home, then do that. And once again, you want to see this as sacred time with God and not allowing anything or anyone to infringe on that time. God has entrusted you with a treasure and he wants you to release it to the world. So now is the time to make the commitment to do the work, to be obedient to the voice of God. I'm going to share something with you that is an opening to one of the section in my book, um, Finding Your Flow. And we're going to end with this. And it really does have to do with obedience. Writing is an act of obedience. And this was me. Stephen Furtick said, great acts of God are often preceded by simple acts of obedience. Great acts of God are often preceded by simple acts of obedience. I was minding my business, going my merry way, singing a simple song when I heard the whisper. I knew it was God because the idea wasn't remotely anything I had ever considered. It wasn't anything that I dreamed of, prayed for, or wished upon a star for. I knew it was God because Deborah wasn't trying to add one more thing to an already jam-packed life, wasn't trying to add a morsel to her already full plate. Knew it was God because not only was it something I had never done before, I had no point of reference for it at all. But I'd heard that still small voice. And once you've heard it, you can't unhear it. You can ignore it. You can choose to disobey it. You can try to flick it away like a fly, but you can't unhear it. And I'd heard. So instead of doing what I've done more often than I care to admit, instead of dismissing it as a whim or offering a litany of excuses why I couldn't or why I shouldn't, instead of disqualifying myself, instead of seeking the opinions of those I deemed wiser and more spiritual, I simply said, okay. And that simple response launched me into a new place of fulfillment and solidified purpose beyond anything I had ever dreamed of, prayed for, or wished upon a star for. The truth is this. Most often, all that is required to hurl us into divine destiny is a simple response. Some of our greatest accomplishments are a result of simply saying, okay, when God speaks. He spoke to Noah, build an ark. Noah said, okay, and became the one to repopulate the earth after the flood. He spoke to Abram, leave your country and go to a land I will show you. Abram said, okay, and became Abraham, the father of many nations, and one through whom all nations would be blessed, the one through whom Messiah came. He spoke to Moses, deliver my people. Moses said, okay, and let millions of Israelites out of slavery. He spoke to a virgin Mary, bear a child. Mary said, okay, and gave birth to the Son of God. He spoke to Peter, feed my sheep. Peter said, okay, and with a simple sermon saw 3,000 people saved in one day. He spoke to Paul, preach my word to the Gentiles. Paul said, okay, and the gospel was spread and the church of Jesus Christ was established all over the then known world. He spoke to his son, redeem the world. Jesus said, okay, and the word was made flesh and gave his life to save all mankind. The greatest adventure in him, the greatest moments of true ministry, the greatest fulfillment of purpose, the greatest manifestation of his love, light, and life through my life have resulted from the simple response when God speaks. Perhaps we have made this life of faith more complicated than it really needs to be. Maybe all it ever was meant to be is hearing that still small voice and simply responding, okay, without needing details, without putting out fleeces, without getting confirmation from every prophet that we know. We simply respond and trust God to confirm his word as we go. What is God speaking to you? A simple response may not only forever change your life, but the lives of countless others as well. God is speaking you to write a book, simply saying okay, and then doing the work, because the okay is not enough. Faith without works is dead. So you can believe what God is telling you about this book you're supposed to write, but until you put in the work, your faith amounts to very little. This is the time before you start to write to make the commitment. When will you write? Where will you write? How much will you write? Set a plan. so that you can get it done. I promise you, it doesn't take months and years. If you are consistent, you will knock that first draft out in 30 days. You can knock it out in 30 days or less. Absolutely. So I'm going to end right now. If you have been watching and this has been a blessing to you, I hope that you will share it with someone, leave a comment. And if you are ready to connect with me and team up with me so I can help you get that book out this year, I would love to talk with you about your book. Please go to my website, deborahgaston.com/book, and schedule a 60-minute distraction-free time to talk about your book and all the possibilities that await you as a published author. This is the year. This is the year. Tell yourself, this is the year that I'm going to write the book that shifts mindsets, that changes mindsets, shifts cultures, and advances God's kingdom in my sphere of influence. Then commit to do the work and become the best-selling author God has called you to be. I'll see you tomorrow night around 6 o'clock, and we'll talk a little bit more about writing that first draft. Have a wonderful, wonderful evening. Bye-bye.